Samupe, Sampadia, Chimafidi non kotu, era one radio. Samupe, Jumpadia, Chimafidi non kotu, era one radio. Oh, and you pampua, Asam pampua.
Hello, good evening, everyone, radio listeners and viewers all over the world. I don't know where you are watching us from. It might be in your evening, it might be in your morning or your afternoon, but here for us in the studio, it's evening, it's 6:33, and I believe in Ghana might be 10:33. Well, tonight, all three of us in full force are here. Pastor Kwan is here. Uncle Max is also here. I think he's having a little bit of technical glitches, but he's going to join us in a jiffy. Well, we're going to continue. Last week, we were dealing with the set theory where Pastor Kwan led us through the mathematical aspect of the Bible. I mean, we've now come to realize that the Bible is not just Greek, Latin, English, or whatever it is. There is a mathematical discipline that makes the Bible a holistic book. All right, Nisama, any updates? I have a couple of questions for you. I know time is gone, but I will ask you, how are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
By God's grace. Let me ask you this question real quick. For those of us here, would you say we still live in a country where there is freedom of speech?
You mean in the US?
Yes.
Gradually, that is becoming a fading memory. I wouldn't. US is becoming like
kangaroo court,
police state or something, and US is becoming unrecognizable.
Unrecognizable.
Yes, wow. Because what is happening is a bit strange, but let's hope maybe in 4 years' time things will revert back to normal. But,
well, you said it on this show. Well, I think I didn't mention it, but this is the Divine Connection show on Era One Radio Network. On behalf of my studio manager, Dr. Setutu, we bring you greetings from the East Coast and the West Coast. The number to call is 24080280263, or if you want to text, it's 51093100946. We are broadcasting live. This is live show, YouTube, Facebook, Modern Ghana Radio, TikTok as well. So you can grab us on anywhere you want to catch us. All right. We're going to go back to what I said earlier on our passage. But before that, Pastor, let me ask this question. Looks as if the evangelistic ministry is very quiet in these times. I would think that if Jesus was in our days here working on this show, he would be a little bit radical. But it looks as if the evangelicals are quiet. Is that a normal thing?
Yeah, because this is what they wished for.
Really?
What is happening is the direct result of their deliberate actions. Look at the people behind him. Reverend Dr. Jeffries, the Liberty man, what's the name? Forwell Jr., Franklin Graham. This is what they wanted.
But these are just a few of the names we've mentioned. Why are the rest aloof?
What I'm saying is, this is what they wanted. And so why would they talk? They have what they asked for.
So let me ask, so is it okay for them to preach Jesus and salvation to get us into heaven, whilst our earthly bodies languish over what is going on, people losing their jobs?
That is the million-dollar question. Now Christianity has become a political movement. not interested in the salvation of souls. That's the whole point. Christianity is unrecognizable in unrecognizable America. That is the whole point. This is what the evangelicals wished for, and they now have it. Why do you think they were? I mean, what do you expect them to do? They have what they've been priming and wishing for. They have it.
But wouldn't that be a form of hypocrisy?
But since when has honesty be part of the evangelical creed? The evangelical movement supported slavery, right? They supported segregation. They supported Jim Crow laws. So why is it? Why do people think this is something new? This is just another side of the coin. Another side of the coin. So let's not pretend that Christianity really is, or let's say honest, true Christianity is there to be practiced. If it is, maybe it is being practiced by the Black church and other denominations, but not the white evangelical movement in America. Never. It has never been about salvation. Else, slavery wouldn't have been part of the agenda. They would never have allowed for God's own creation to become slaves, to be discriminated against, and what have you. So it is what they've always asked for. Let's face it.
Because I really shudder to think about some of the things going on. And I have a friend who goes to a mixed church, let's say 60, 70% white and the rest other denominations. And I must say that they don't really feel that the love and passionately what is going on. I know the pastor will try and just, try and give us some soothing words and all that stuff. Okay, you come, we preach Jesus salvation. But then people in the country they have issues with what is going on, and they don't see religion as a panacea for what is going on. I would think that there should be some delegation. Hey, let's rally up and let's try and fix some of this thing that is going on. We have separation of church and state and all that stuff, but to me, I'm looking at Jesus, the one who is our model, and I say, what would Jesus do in situations like this? Is he going to just look on and just say, give to Caesar what is Caesar and to God what is God? Because I know he did go to the church and ransack and beat up people who were dirtying his father's house. So I'm looking at what Jesus will do in some of this when people are losing their jobs and, the psychological effects and all that. It's just mind-boggling.
Dr. Boison, there is a novel. It's a novel, so you call it a fiction, but it captures what is happening fittingly. It's called The Brothers Karamazov by a Russian author called Dostoevsky, Fyodor Dostoevsky. And he has a portion or a section in that novel called The Grand Inquisitor. In that section of the book, the Grand Inquisitor had imprisoned Jesus. Jesus had returned to the earth, right? And this Grand Inquisitor had Jesus arrested and then ready to be burnt at the stake the following day. And one of the statements he made in that encounter, that dialogue he had with Jesus whilst Jesus was in prison, was that, listen, he told Jesus, we've accomplished what we set out to do. These people, the masses, we have them where we want them. They are happy the way we want them to be. They are not concerned about higher ideals. Now your return is going to really upstage things, and we are not ready for you. So tomorrow you will be burnt at stake. That is what is happening. If Jesus appears in the evangelical circles today, they will not only would they prosecute him, they will crucify him a second time.
All right. Tonight it looks as if I want to get some questions off my chest, and then Uncle Max is not here. But maybe I have my final question. It's also okay. Next week we can continue fully. But my last question: I watched a video, an article about this singer preacher Marvin Sapp. I don't know whether you saw it, but it was soliciting for $20 in the church. He said, if you have 1,000 people in the church listening to him and 1,000 people online watching him, that would be 2,000 times $20. You get him 40,000. He didn't say what he was going to use it for. And then later on, when he said those who were on stage, he said the cost to be on stage, the preacher should pay $100. Now, when you look at articles that were written on Twitter and all the comments that were coming were to and fro. Some were bashing him for asking $20 or $100 because he said they should close the church doors. Nobody was going out. He was going to raise that money. Now, again, this is the Divine Connection Show. We are all believers. We are all Christians. So whatever Christian, whatever spiritual we discuss here, we want to make sure we are sanctifying the church for Jesus' second coming. So that is why we say some of this. Now, there were comments on either side. What is your comment? If you heard something like that, would you accuse the pastor for taking the $20 or you think it is right? I mean, it's a normal thing to do.
Dr. Boison, let's first say doing ministry is expensive.
Okay.
Right? So if the goal is to solicit funds to help the ministry, like feed the poor, right? Publish materials, bring about pursue some policy change in order to brighten the lives, to improve the economic and social outlook of people, then it's worthwhile. Okay. But if it is to line the pockets of some people, no. You're getting me? No. So one really has to go to the heart of the issue. What was the purpose? Are you getting me? What was the purpose for the fundraising? Right? So once I get the purpose, once I get that answer, I'll be in a position to say something substantive.
Okay, thank you very much. Because my issue was that if you have a church of 1,000 people, and let's say you are talking about offerings or tithes or whatever it is, $20 is nothing. People can give more than $20. So why was that an issue? Of course, like you said, we don't know the motive or the purpose, and we don't want to bash or stand in or against or whatever, but we'll leave it as it is. But if you are going to church, even if you are going to watch a movie, you will pay close to $20. So they want to say, going to church, they have to bash people or cajole people to give only $20. Because I thought giving offering in the church should be more than the $20. I don't even see why that is.
I would say it is a way to make it possible for everybody to be part of
do something. So there are some who go to church and don't give anything and go.
No, not necessarily. I mean, because obviously this will be something additional to what the church normally.
Give already. Okay, so this is like a what do you call
like a fundraising, like a fundraiser here, right? It wasn't the normal
or normal offering or tithe or whatever.
Yeah, it was a one-time thing. It wasn't a permanent fixture.
All right, thank you very much. Well, here on Divine Connection, we ask questions and we address questions that pertains to our spiritual life as well as our daily lives. We want to blend them. We want to make sure we are living life to the fullest. All right, let me reintroduce our jingle and then we'll come back and do maybe 20 minutes of our study tonight. Stay tight. C'est mon père, ça me fait bien tiens.
Chimafidi nunkotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe dietia. Chimafidi nunkotu era one radio. Oh, ayumpam chima. Asam pam chima. Ekratum chima. Era one, yebo yumpam chima.
All right, we are back to Era One Radio Studio. This is the Divine Connection Show. I'm here with Reverend Professor Robert Akrom. He started a set theory last week or so, and so we didn't get anywhere. But I said today is another opportunity. It might be a short night. By 7:15 we should be off here. But I believe that he has more information that he was supposed to give us last week, but because of time. So I'll just leave the platform for him to continue from where or what he wants to teach us tonight. So viewers, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for the next 20, 30 minutes or so. And Pastor Akron, as usual, is going to wow us. These are some of the things that you don't hear from anywhere. It only comes from his brains and his sleep. So over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Dr. Boison. I think last week we ended at verse 10. I mean, very interesting take. I mean, how the author presented the whole scenario. It's like you almost could feel yourself in the midst of this, call it, literary festival. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when they falleth out in the war, they will join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Dr. Boison, the last time I made this point that in verse 10, the king presents an argument and also lays out a plan.
Oh, by the way, please let me just chip in that the text he just read came from Exodus chapter 1, verses 7 through 14. That's what we've been using for the past week. So in case you are lost, please refer to Exodus chapter 1, verse 7 through 14. He just read the 10th verse where he says, "Come, let us deal wisely with." That's what he read. So all right, okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and so Dr. Boison, I introduced the question of how to really, one of the key tools we use in data analytics, artificial intelligence, computer science, and what have you, is a tool called ontological modeling, right? Okay. Where we take a text and we try to identify what we call the classes in the narrative, and then the individuals that belong to the classes, and then the relationship between the individuals. So there are three things to consider in an ontology, right? You have the class. In some places, you see it written as concept. You have the class, and then you have the roles or the properties, and then you have the individuals. At the end of the day, we are really interested in the individuals, right? The activities of the individuals, the properties of the individuals, right? But we know that the individuals belong to classes. And so I used that tool to really make sense of what is happening in this text. And what I said was that if you use that tool to really dissect this text, you realize that certain classes emerge. One of the classes, the first class that emerges, is the class of kings, because the Bible says a new king arose. So that means you have, as of this time, there had been different kings. So they will fit into a class. A class is equal to a set in set theory. And therefore, every set has its elements. And so if you take that idea that a class in ontological modeling is the equivalent of a set in set theory, then each class has its elements, which we will call the members or the individuals in that class. So you come to this test, you realize that there was the king class, and then we see in verse 8 the king talking to his people. The people here will constitute more than one people, so that also becomes a class. So you have an individual in the kingly class and individuals in the people's class. And here, the relationship between the king and the people is that first, the Bible tells us that a new king arose over Egypt. Egypt is the parent class for both the land and the people of Egypt. And so a new king arose over Egypt. Egypt is a class here made up of what? The element called land and the element called people. And each of those elements each of them constitutes a class. The land constitutes a class with its own elements. And you realize that the text tells us that one, there was a city. And out from the city, you have treasure cities. And then, as members of the treasure cities, you have Pithom and Ramses. These were towns, or they were cities, right? So you realize that there is a parent class called Egypt, the land of Egypt, and then you have a subclass called city, and then you have a subclass of city called treasure cities, and then you have members or the individuals in that subclass called city. You have Pithom and Ramses that the Israelites built for the king. So the relationship between the king class and the Egypt class was one of rising over, where the king, let's say, now gains rule over a class that is made up of land and people. And here in verse 9, we see this king, which will say the king class interacting with the king people class.
Okay.
Right? And the relationship here is dialogue. The king, the individual in the king class, here the king, the new king, talking to his people. And what did he say? He identified another class called the children of Israel. So let's look at what is happening here. You have a class called Egypt. That class becomes a parent class. And under it, you have the land of Egypt and then the people of Egypt. Under the land of Egypt, you have Treasure City, and then under Treasure City, you have Pithom and Ramses.
Yes.
And then you go under the same parent class, Egypt, you have the people of Egypt. Under people of Egypt, you have the king class, the people, call them the Egyptian class, you have the children of Israel class, you have the tax master class, you have the Egyptian class. And so you are dealing with different classes with members, or we call them individuals. In set theory, you call them the elements of the class. And what you want to do for each interaction between two classes, you want to look at the relationship between them. And as we said, between the king class and the king people class, what we see here is communication, dialogue, where the king is giving them information about the state of affairs. And what does he say? He tells them the children of Israel, a whole class, they are more and they are mightier than the rest of Egyptians. So we can actually broadly divide the Egyptian people, right, the people living in Egypt, into two broad classes: the children of Israel and everybody else. Call the everybody else the Egyptians, right? And then you have the children of Israel. Now, once you understand that, then you go back to the text, especially in verse 7, the author gives us the state of affairs in Egypt at this time. And this is what the author says. He says, and the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Dr. Boison, if you take all these attributes together, you get a picture of prosperity.
And reproduction.
Right? Serious prosperity, both in their body and in their minds. Right? Oh. And so the author now tells us a new king arises, and then he convinces his people. And the question becomes, which people? Did that people the king addressed, did that people include the children of Israel? And if you look at the text, it couldn't be.
Yeah, they were
It
not
didn't
part.
include the children of Israel. But then the question becomes, the new king that arose, did he only arise over a certain people and not others? So when you talk of, you see this king addressing his people, would these people constitute his cabinet or the rest of Egypt minus the children of Israel? And that's where the problem, the interesting aspects of this text begin to show up. And so we give that name, the king people, the people he addressed. That will become a class. And then the Bible tells us the king lays out a plan as part of the information he gave them, that the children of Israel, that class, right, they are more in number. They are mightier than the rest of Egypt. And so he says, let's deal wisely with them. And then he gives the reason. Else, the children of Israel will multiply, according to verse 10, number 1. And then when war falls or war breaks out, the children of Israel, who in the first place are more in number and mightier in strength than the rest of Egypt, will now join forces with Egypt's enemies. And then fight against Egypt. And the byproduct of it will be that the Israelites will find and use that as an excuse to escape
from Egypt.
So the question now to ask, Mr. King, if you think the children of Israel, that class, is an internal enemy, right? Because that's what it is, Dr. Boison. If they will join to your enemies, don't forget your enemies will come with a certain number. Already you are outnumbered in Egypt, right, by the Israelites. They are more prosperous and they are stronger than you. And now they join to your natural enemies. That will be an overwhelming force for Egypt. Right? So what did the king want. He makes us to understand if we don't do anything, if Egypt didn't do anything about the prevailing situation, then the children of Israel, who had shown a knack for multiplication, will multiply as a natural thing. And therefore, the goal was to stop the children of Israel from multiplying. That was one. Number two, the king used the word when and not if, which means war was a certainty. And so he wanted to make sure that not only will the children of Israel not multiply in number, secondly, they will not increase in strength. In fact, if they could help it, reduce their ability to fight, so that there will be no opportunity of them to align with Egypt's enemies. And even if they did, they will not have a fighting strength.
On what?
You getting me? And then the icing on the cake is, we don't want the children of Israel to leave Egypt, even if they pose a threat. Dr. Boison,
yes,
this
sir.
is what makes this test interesting. And as I said last week, every leader who faces such a situation would like or would strive for some sort of equity.
Pastor, let me take a quick message and then I'll be back. Okay, we'll be back.
Okay.
Everyone on the ark now!
All right, listeners, unfortunately, we may have to end the broadcast right here. There's an issue that needs to be taken care of right now. So we'll come back next week. Sorry and apologies for that. All right. All right, Pastor Akron, I will see you next week.
God bless you.
Okay,
And
all right.
may God take care of the situation.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.